Royal Guard TACKLES Camilla's chauffeur, after finding suspicious drops in glove box. It was a quiet morning near the royal estate, the kind of morning where the streets were almost empty, and even the usual city sounds seemed muted. The sun had just started to rise, casting a soft golden light over the high walls and gates that surrounded the palace grounds. The air smelled fresh, with a faint hint of dew on the grass, and there was a sense of calm that usually marked the start of a normal day. But for the royal guard, calm mornings were never truly calm. Every day brought the possibility of unexpected events, and today would prove to be no exception. Among the guards stationed near the estate was Sergeant Daniel Reed, a veteran who had served in the Royal Guard for over 10 years. Daniel was known for his sharp eyes and keen instincts, qualities that made him one of the most reliable members of the team. He had seen all kinds of situations, from minor traffic disturbances to high-pressure security alerts, but he always approached every day as if it could be different, as if today could be the day when something unusual might happen. Daniel's routine that morning was familiar. He walked along the perimeter of the estate, inspecting the gates and scanning the nearby roads for any sign of unusual activity. Every so often, he would glance at the approaching vehicles, noting their speed and behavior. Most drivers were careful and respectful, aware that they were near a high-security area. But occasionally, a driver would stand out, either because of their hurried pace or because they seemed nervous under the watchful eyes of the guards. As Daniel observed the street that morning, his eyes caught sight of a sleek, black luxury car approaching from the distance. The car was polished to perfection, reflecting the early sunlight, and its tinted windows made it impossible to see who was inside. What caught Daniel's attention was not just the car itself, but the way it moved. It approached with unusual speed, weaving slightly as if the driver was trying to avoid being noticed. Something about the movement did not feel right, even though on the surface it could have been just a hurried chauffeur running late. Daniel's instincts immediately kicked in. He signaled to his fellow guards with a subtle hand gesture, indicating that the approaching vehicle should be monitored closely. His heart rate increased slightly, not out of fear but out of focus. Being a royal guard meant being alert at all times, ready for situations that could range from minor mistakes to potential security threats. The rules were clear. Any vehicle approaching the palace in an unusual manner had to be checked, no matter who the driver claimed to be. As the car drew closer, Daniel noticed small details that further raised his suspicion. The car slowed down briefly, but then accelerated again as it passed certain checkpoints, almost as if the driver was testing the response of the guards. The tinted windows made it impossible to see the faces inside, but Daniel's experience told him that hesitation in such a high-security area was never a good sign. Every step, every movement, was part of a careful observation he had learned over the years. Finally, as the car neared the checkpoint, Daniel stepped forward and raised his hand in the universal signal for the vehicle to stop. The car hesitated for a moment, then complied, pulling over to the side of the road. From a distance, it looked calm enough, but Daniel knew better. He could see the subtle signs of tension, the way the driver's hands gripped the steering wheel, the slight rocking of the car as it slowed, and the faint reflection of movement behind the tinted windows. Daniel approached the car carefully, his posture professional, his eyes scanning the interior for anything unusual. The driver, a middle-aged man dressed in a neat chauffeur's uniform, rolled down the window. His expression was polite but contained a hint of unease. "Good morning, sir," he said, his voice steady but slightly strained. "Is there a problem?" "Good morning," Daniel replied calmly, though his tone carried authority. "This is a routine security check. I need to inspect your vehicle before you proceed." The words were simple, but they conveyed the seriousness of the situation. In his experience, most people complied immediately, understanding the importance of following security protocols near the palace. The chauffeur nodded, taking a deep breath as if to steady himself. He opened the door slightly, allowing Daniel to inspect the interior. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The seats were clean, the dashboard was organized, and there was no immediate sign of danger. But Daniel's instincts told him to look closer. He carefully moved toward the glove box, a small compartment that often contained documents, small personal items, or sometimes overlooked hazards. When Daniel opened the glove box, his eyes narrowed. Inside, he noticed something unusual, small drops of a liquid that glistened under the morning sun. The drops were subtle, almost easy to miss, but Daniel's experience made him immediately alert. Even though it could have been something harmless in a high-security context, no detail was too small to ignore. He quickly closed the glove box and called for backup, speaking into his radio with calm precision. Unit 1 to base. Routine check, but I've found something suspicious in the vehicle, requesting additional personnel. While waiting for his colleagues to arrive, Daniel maintained a professional demeanor. He didn't want to alarm the chauffeur unnecessarily, but he also could not ignore the potential risk. The chauffeur's polite smile now seemed slightly strained, and his hands rested tensely on the steering wheel. Daniel observed him carefully, noting every movement, every flicker of hesitation. The moments stretched, each second feeling longer than the last. Passers-by, few as they were, glanced curiously at the scene, some slowing down to see what was happening. Daniel remained focused, blocking out distractions and concentrating on the task at hand. The safety of the royal estate, and potentially many others, depended on his vigilance. Finally, the backup team arrived, their presence bringing an additional layer of security. They positioned themselves strategically around the vehicle, ready to assist if needed. Daniel turned his attention back to the chauffeur. "Sir, I need you to step out of the car, please," he said, his voice firm but respectful. The chauffeur hesitated for a brief moment, then complied, stepping carefully onto the pavement. As he exited, Daniel continued to observe closely. Every detail mattered, the way the chauffeur moved, his facial expressions, even the small gestures of his hands. For Daniel, this was not just a routine check. It was a test of instincts, training, and experience. The stakes were high, and although the morning had begun peacefully, the presence of those small drops in the glove box had changed everything. While the situation seemed minor on the surface, Daniel knew that in his line of work, even small details could have significant consequences. He remained vigilant, aware that the eyes of the public and the press could be watching, especially if news of the incident spread. Security was not just about handling immediate threats. It was about maintaining confidence, order, and professionalism in every action. By the time the backup team fully assessed the scene, Daniel had already formed a mental picture of how events might unfold. He anticipated the next steps, ready to act if necessary. The chauffeur remained calm, though the tension was visible, and Daniel knew it was his responsibility to ensure that the situation was handled smoothly, without escalation, and without unnecessary alarm. The quiet morning, the shining luxury car, and the small, glistening drops in the glove box had transformed what would have been an ordinary day into an event that required careful attention, precision, and calm judgment. Daniel's eyes scanned the vehicle one last time, his mind running through every protocol, every precaution, every lesson learned over a decade of service. In moments like this, experience mattered more than anything else. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting stronger light on the scene, Daniel remained alert, ready for whatever would happen next, knowing that even the smallest detail could make a difference in the safety of the royal estate. As the backup team arrived, the tension around the sleek black car grew, but Daniel remained calm. Every member of the royal guard had been trained for situations like this, where the ordinary could suddenly become extraordinary. They moved quietly, communicating through hand signals and whispers into their radios. The street, which only moments ago had felt peaceful and ordinary, now seemed charged with anticipation, as though everyone there could sense that something unusual was unfolding. Daniel stepped back for a moment, observing his colleagues as they positioned themselves around the car. He noticed the careful way each guard took their stance, ensuring that every angle was covered. The chauffeur, still standing by the vehicle, seemed increasingly uneasy. His polite smile was now replaced by a subtle frown, and he glanced nervously at the royal guards surrounding him. It was clear that he understood the seriousness of the situation, even if he did not fully understand what had triggered it. With a nod to his team, Daniel motioned toward the car once more. "We need to inspect the contents carefully," he said, his voice calm but commanding. One of the guards stepped forward and opened the passenger door slowly, scanning the interior for anything unusual. Another guard kept an eye on the chauffeur, ensuring he did not make any sudden movements. Every action was precise, controlled, and deliberate, standard procedure for handling potential security concerns. Daniel returned his attention to the glove box, where the suspicious drops had been found. He crouched slightly, examining the area from a closer angle. The drops glistened under the sunlight, small and seemingly harmless, yet their presence was enough to raise concern. Daniel had seen similar situations before, cases where something that looked ordinary at first glance could lead to unexpected complications. Even a minor liquid, if unidentified, could pose a risk, and he knew the importance of treating every potential hazard seriously. The chauffeur, sensing that the guards were taking their time, tried to explain. "It's just a cleaning solution, sir," he said, his voice steady but tinged with nervousness. "I must have spilled a few drops while polishing the dashboard. It's nothing dangerous." Daniel listened carefully, giving the chauffeur a chance to speak. In security, it was always important to remain fair and professional. Assumptions could lead to mistakes, and every guard knew that. Yet, instincts were also vital. Even if the liquid turned out to be harmless, Daniel had to ensure the safety of the palace and everyone around it. He could not allow himself to dismiss the situation based on appearances alone. "Thank you for explaining," Daniel replied calmly, "but we need to verify it. Please stay back while we complete our checks." His tone was respectful but firm. The chauffeur nodded, moving a few steps away from the vehicle, his hands raised slightly to show he was unarmed. While the chemical analysis team prepared to examine the drops, Daniel's mind was focused on procedure. He thought about the potential scenarios, each one more improbable than the last, but all requiring readiness. Perhaps it was truly nothing. Perhaps it was a simple accident. But in his line of work, perhaps was never enough. Precaution was everything. The guards carefully collected a small sample of the liquid from the glove box. They used specialized tools to avoid contamination and ensure safety. The drops were placed into a secure container, and the team moved to the portable testing equipment stationed nearby. The air was filled with quiet murmurs of professionalism, the kind of focused silence that only came when trained people faced an uncertain situation. Daniel kept his eyes on the chauffeur. Every small gesture, the way he shifted his weight, the subtle tapping of his foot, the quick glance toward the guards, was noted. These were the details that often revealed the truth, sometimes more clearly than words. The chauffeur seemed genuinely cooperative, but Daniel remained cautious. Years of experience had taught him that appearances could be deceiving, and it was better to act carefully than to regret inaction. As the analysis began, Daniel's thoughts wandered briefly to the potential outcomes. He considered how this situation might appear to the public if it were reported. The idea of a royal guard tackling a chauffeur over suspicious drops might seem dramatic, even amusing to some. Yet for Daniel and his colleagues, it was all about duty, about following protocol, and about ensuring that no detail, however minor, was ignored. The chemical testing process was thorough. The guards monitored every step, noting reactions and readings from the equipment. Daniel stood close enough to observe, but maintained a professional distance to avoid interfering with the process. Time seemed to stretch, each second filled with anticipation and careful observation. The street, once calm and quiet, now felt charged with the gravity of their task. Meanwhile, the chauffeur shifted uneasily. He attempted small talk to ease the tension, commenting on the weather and the beauty of the morning light. Daniel acknowledged his words politely, but did not allow the conversation to distract him from the task at hand. Every word, every action was part of the scene, and he needed to keep the focus on security. Finally, the analysis began to produce results. The team examined the chemical composition of the drops, comparing them to known substances and checking for any signs of danger. Daniel observed as the readings confirmed what the chauffeur had claimed. The drops were, in fact, an ordinary cleaning solution. The small liquid had no harmful properties and posed no threat to anyone in the vicinity. A collective sigh of relief passed through the guards. While professionalism had remained intact throughout, there was a quiet moment of satisfaction in knowing that the potential risk had been identified and carefully managed. Daniel nodded to his colleagues, signaling that the immediate concern had been resolved. The chauffeur, realizing that the situation was no longer dangerous, allowed himself a small smile of relief. "I'm very sorry for the confusion," he said, bowing slightly. "I didn't mean to cause any concern." Daniel nodded. "Thank you for your cooperation." "It's always better to be safe than sorry," Accidents happen, but protocol must be followed. His tone was calm, professional, and reassuring. Even though the situation had been minor, it was an important reminder of why vigilance was essential. The other guards began to pack up their equipment, returning to their routine positions along the street and near the palace gates. The tension that had filled the morning slowly dissipated, replaced once again by a sense of calm. Passers-by who had paused to watch the scene resumed their morning routines, some exchanging curious glances, others whispering about what they had just witnessed. Daniel took a deep breath, allowing himself a moment of reflection. For all its drama, the situation had unfolded exactly as it should have. The protocols were followed, the team worked together seamlessly, and no one had been harmed. It was a successful exercise in vigilance, demonstrating the importance of preparation and careful observation. As he walked back toward the checkpoint, Daniel glanced at the chauffeur one last time. The man was quietly resuming his duties, perhaps feeling a bit embarrassed but otherwise unharmed. Daniel understood the human side of the situation. Mistakes, accidents, and misunderstandings were inevitable. What mattered was how they were handled, and in this case, professionalism had guided every action. The morning light had grown stronger, illuminating the scene with clarity and warmth. Birds chirped in the nearby trees, and the streets returned to their usual quiet rhythm. Yet for Daniel and his fellow guards, the events of those few tense moments would remain a reminder of their responsibilities. Even the smallest detail, like a few drops of liquid in a glove box, could require careful attention, patience, and adherence to protocol. Daniel adjusted his uniform, checked his equipment, and resumed his watch. The streets might appear ordinary again, but he knew better. Every day brought the potential for surprises, and every day demanded vigilance. As he continued his patrol, he remained alert, prepared for whatever the rest of the day might bring. In his line of work, there were no minor moments, only moments that required attention, focus, and the steady hand of experience. And so, the quiet morning near the palace continued, its calm surface hiding the careful attention and professionalism of those who safeguarded it. Daniel moved along the street with purpose, the black luxury car now parked safely aside, its driver ready to continue once cleared. The event, though resolved, served as a small but meaningful example of how even routine mornings could become a test of skill, patience, and commitment. Even though the chemical analysis had confirmed that the drops in the glove box were harmless, the atmosphere around the black luxury car remained tense. Daniel knew better than to let his guard down. In the royal guard, the safety of the palace and everyone in its vicinity was never something to take lightly. One small mistake, one overlooked detail, could create consequences far larger than anyone imagined. So he stayed close, vigilant, his eyes scanning the chauffeur's every movement while remaining aware of the crowd and his team. The chauffeur, still standing beside the car, seemed to relax slightly, but his unease was still evident. His polite smile had returned, though it now seemed more forced than genuine. He adjusted his gloves, straightened his uniform, and tried to appear calm, yet his fingers twitched slightly, betraying a hint of nervousness. Daniel watched it all carefully. He had learned over the years that even the smallest gestures could reveal a person's true state of mind. "Sir," Daniel said in a calm, measured tone, "we need to complete a routine safety check of the car before you proceed. Step aside, please, while we finish up." He gestured toward the sidewalk, ensuring that the chauffeur understood the instructions. The chauffeur hesitated. His hand moved slightly toward the car door, then paused. "I've already explained," he said, his voice steady but carrying a note of concern. "It was just a cleaning solution. There's nothing more to check." Daniel remained calm, but his experience told him to take no chances. "I understand," he replied. "But protocol requires that we verify everything. It's for everyone's safety." His words were firm but polite, leaving no room for argument while avoiding confrontation. For a brief moment, the chauffeur's eyes flickered toward the crowd that had begun to gather. Even in a quiet street near the palace, there were always passers-by or curious onlookers who would notice unusual activity. Social media had trained the public to record and share almost everything. Daniel knew that the scene could easily be misinterpreted if it escalated. Still, he could not compromise on protocol, no matter the optics. The chauffeur stepped back, but his movements were cautious, as if preparing for any sudden command. Daniel signaled to his team to take their positions. Two guards moved slightly closer to the car, while another remained alert behind the chauffeur, maintaining a clear line of sight. The situation was delicate. Every action had to be controlled, every word carefully chosen. Daniel decided to approach the driver personally, maintaining a professional but authoritative stance. "Sir, I need you to follow my instructions exactly," he said. "Step a few meters away from the car. We will finish the inspection. Your cooperation is appreciated." The chauffeur nodded slowly, his movements deliberate but tense. He moved backward, keeping his hands visible at all times. Daniel could see the subtle shaking of his shoulders, the slight tightening of his jaw. He spoke to the man again, keeping his tone calm and reassuring. "You're not in trouble. We just need to complete the check. It will be over quickly." Despite the explanation, a moment of panic seemed to flicker across the chauffeur's face. His eyes darted toward the glove box again, as if checking to make sure nothing had been disturbed. Daniel noticed the gesture but remained composed. Panic, hesitation, or sudden movements could create misunderstandings, especially when security was involved. He made a silent note to stay extra vigilant. The crowd watching the scene had grown slightly, though most remained at a respectful distance. Some were curious, others whispering to each other, and a few were already capturing the event on their phones. Daniel knew that in moments like this, professionalism was as important as procedure. Every move he made, every instruction he gave, had to be precise, controlled, and calm. The guards began a thorough inspection of the vehicle once again. They checked every compartment carefully, including the glove box, which had already been examined but still required confirmation. Daniel observed closely, making sure that every step followed the established protocols. Even though the substance had been identified as harmless, completing the check correctly would demonstrate that the Royal Guard's vigilance was consistent and uncompromising. As the guards worked, the chauffeur shifted uncomfortably. He seemed to understand that the inspection was necessary, but struggled to hide his nervousness. Daniel noticed that his hand brushed against the car door multiple times, as if subconsciously seeking reassurance or preparing for movement. Every small gesture mattered, and Daniel remained alert, ready to act if needed. Then, as one guard reached toward a small compartment in the back of the car, the chauffeur made a sudden movement toward the door. It was instinctive, a small action, but enough to trigger Daniel's training. Years of experience had taught him that even minor, unexpected movements near a high-profile vehicle could create dangerous situations if not handled calmly and decisively. "Stop," Daniel said firmly. His voice carried authority, clear enough for the chauffeur to hear, but calm enough not to startle the surrounding crowd. The chauffeur froze, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of compliance. Daniel approached carefully, moving swiftly but controlled, positioning himself to prevent any sudden escape while avoiding unnecessary force. "Step aside from the vehicle immediately," he instructed. "It is for your safety and the safety of everyone nearby. You are not in trouble, but you must follow instructions." The chauffeur hesitated again, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Daniel could see the internal struggle. Part of him wanted to comply, but another part seemed unsure, perhaps afraid of the situation or worried about public perception. Daniel's training emphasized patience and control in such moments. It was crucial not to escalate the situation unnecessarily while still maintaining authority. With a gentle but firm motion, Daniel guided the chauffeur a few steps away from the car. At the same time, his colleagues positioned themselves to ensure no sudden movements could cause harm. The maneuver was quick, precise, and professional, reflecting years of training in handling delicate situations. Once the chauffeur was in position, Daniel signaled for a quick final check of the interior. The guards carefully examined every compartment, ensuring nothing remained suspicious. The glove box, once again, was inspected and confirmed to contain only harmless items. Other sections of the car, including the backseat and floor compartments, were examined to make sure nothing had been overlooked. Throughout the inspection, Daniel maintained a calm presence. He spoke to the chauffeur in reassuring tones, explaining each step briefly, ensuring that he remained cooperative and calm. "We are almost finished," Daniel said. "Thank you for your patience. These steps are routine and ensure everyone's safety." The chauffeur nodded, visibly relaxing as the inspection concluded. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly, and he let out a quiet sigh. Daniel noted the change in posture, a small sign that the immediate stress had passed. The crowd watching the scene remained quiet, curious, but respectful as the guards completed their tasks efficiently. Daniel then addressed the chauffeur one final time. "Everything checks out. You are free to proceed. Please drive carefully and remember that these checks are routine and for everyone's protection." The chauffeur bowed slightly in acknowledgement, gratitude and relief evident in his expression. The team began packing up their equipment, the scene slowly returning to its normal rhythm. The black luxury car, once the center of a tense moment, now seemed ordinary again. The street returned to its usual quiet morning, birds singing in the trees and the sunlight casting warm patterns across the pavement. Daniel stayed for a moment longer, reflecting on the incident. It was minor in the grand scheme of things, but every detail mattered. The training, vigilance, and professionalism of the Royal Guard had ensured a safe outcome without unnecessary escalation. Even though the drops had been harmless, the response had demonstrated the importance of following protocol and remaining alert. As the chauffeur finally drove away, Daniel observed his departure carefully, ensuring that everything remained secure. He then returned to his patrol, ready for the next unexpected event. For Daniel and his colleagues, no day was ordinary, and even routine checks could become moments of importance, requiring skill, focus, and steady judgment. The morning continued, calm once again, but the memory of those tense moments remained vivid in Daniel's mind. He had seen firsthand how quickly a situation could change, and how even small details required careful attention. As he resumed his duties, he knew that professionalism, patience, and vigilance were not just ideals. They were essential tools in protecting the palace, its residents, and everyone nearby. And so the Royal Guard continued its watch, quietly ensuring that safety prevailed, even in moments that seemed minor or ordinary to the outside world. The incident with the chauffeur would soon be a story of calm professionalism and careful response, a testament to the training, skill, and dedication required in the service of the Royal Guard. After the chauffeur had been guided away from the vehicle and the gloves box drops were identified as harmless, Daniel felt a moment of relief, but he knew the situation was not completely over. In the Royal Guard, any incident near the palace demanded follow-up, both to ensure security and to maintain the integrity of the procedures. A minor event today could become a major concern tomorrow if not documented and understood fully. With this in mind, Daniel and his team carefully began the next phase: investigation and clarification. The first step was to document everything. Every action, every observation, and every detail of the incident needed to be recorded accurately. Daniel and his colleagues took notes about the time of day, the location, the behavior of the chauffeur, the exact nature of the liquid found, and the steps taken to secure the scene. Even seemingly trivial details, like the direction of the sunlight or the temperature that morning, were logged. In high-security situations, documentation could make the difference between understanding an incident fully or leaving room for misinterpretation. Meanwhile, the chemical analysis team had begun their detailed work on the drops collected from the glove box. Using specialized equipment, they examined the liquid's composition, running tests to confirm whether it was harmful or completely harmless. Daniel watched the process carefully, understanding that even though the initial check suggested it was harmless, confirmation from the experts was essential. In cases involving high-profile locations, no assumption could be trusted without proper verification. As the analysis continued, the chauffeur waited politely on the sidewalk, his posture more relaxed now that the immediate tension had passed. He occasionally glanced at the team, clearly anxious about the outcome. Daniel approached him, maintaining a professional distance. "We are just confirming the results," Daniel said calmly. "Once the analysis is complete, you'll be free to continue your day. We appreciate your patience." The chauffeur nodded, though a slight furrow in his brow showed that he was still concerned. He had never been in a situation like this, where a simple accident had turned into a high-security incident. Daniel understood the human side of the event. After all, even well-trained professionals could feel stress in unexpected circumstances. The difference was that the Royal Guard had to manage not only their own reactions, but also the reactions of others in tense situations. Once the laboratory results were complete, The team confirmed that the drops were indeed harmless. The liquid was a common cleaning solution, exactly as the chauffeur had described. Daniel noted the confirmation, allowing himself a subtle sense of satisfaction. The procedure had been thorough, professional, and effective. Even though the threat was imaginary, the outcome demonstrated that the Royal Guard's vigilance could prevent potential misunderstandings from escalating. Despite the harmless nature of the liquid, the incident had already drawn attention. A few bystanders had observed the scene, and some had quietly taken videos or photos. Daniel knew that in today's world, events could quickly become public knowledge. Social media could amplify even the smallest misunderstanding, and stories about security actions at royal estates were always likely to attract interest. Maintaining professionalism and transparency was crucial, both to protect the public image and to ensure that trust in the Royal Guard remained intact. Daniel decided to speak briefly with the bystanders in a polite but clear manner. "Thank you for your interest, but this area is a high-security zone. Please maintain a safe distance and avoid interfering with security operations." His voice was calm, respectful, and firm. Most of the people watching seemed to understand and nodded in acknowledgement, stepping back slightly. A few continued to watch quietly, curious about what had happened but unwilling to disrupt the work of the guards. The chauffeur, having overheard Daniel's instructions, appeared relieved. He quietly expressed his gratitude, saying, "Thank you for your professionalism. I understand why this was necessary, and I apologize for any concern I may have caused." Daniel nodded in response, acknowledging the apology while reinforcing the importance of following protocol. "Your cooperation is appreciated," he said. "Situations like this are handled best when everyone stays calm and follows the rules." As the crowd dispersed, Daniel returned his attention to the team. The guards and analysts continued to discuss the incident in low, professional voices. They reviewed the procedures that had been followed, identifying any areas that could be improved in future situations. Even though the event had been minor, continuous improvement was part of the Royal Guard's approach. Every incident, no matter how small, was an opportunity to refine skills and strengthen security practices. During the review, one of the guards suggested a minor adjustment to the inspection procedure for glove boxes. It was a small improvement, designed to ensure that even similar spills could be handled more efficiently in the future. Daniel noted the suggestion and agreed it would be included in the next training session. It was a reminder that the effectiveness of security depended not only on vigilance in the moment, but also on learning and adapting from each event. Meanwhile, the chauffeur was escorted briefly to a quiet area near the palace gates to provide a written statement about the incident. He described how the liquid had spilled, why he had not noticed it immediately, and his reaction when approached by the Royal Guard. Daniel observed the process, ensuring it was conducted respectfully and professionally. The chauffeur seemed to appreciate the fairness of the procedure, and the calm, structured approach helped to alleviate some of his embarrassment. Once the statement was completed, Daniel and his team summarized the findings for the senior officers. They explained the circumstances, the steps taken to secure the scene, the verification of the liquid, and the overall outcome. The senior officers commended the guards for their professionalism and careful handling of the situation. Even though the incident had been minor, it had been managed flawlessly, reflecting well on the team and the Royal Guard as a whole. Later, Daniel reflected privately on the day's events. He understood that the incident would likely be remembered for the visual drama, the guards surrounding a luxury vehicle, the careful inspection, the disciplined handling of the chauffeur. But the most important aspect was the professionalism behind the scenes. The public might only see a few moments of tension, but the reality was a careful, methodical process that ensured safety without unnecessary escalation. The incident also highlighted the balance between security and perception. In today's world, where news spreads rapidly and public opinion can be shaped by small fragments of information, the Royal Guard had to be both effective and discreet. Daniel had seen firsthand how quickly minor misunderstandings could grow into major stories if not handled correctly. Maintaining professionalism, transparency, and fairness was essential. The chauffeur, now relieved and more confident, prepared to leave. Daniel gave him final instructions, Drive safely and remember that our inspections are routine. We are here to protect everyone, including yourself. Cooperation makes the process faster and easier." The chauffeur nodded and expressed gratitude once more. He started the car and carefully drove away, the earlier tension now replaced with a sense of normalcy. After the vehicle departed, Daniel and his colleagues gathered briefly to debrief. They reviewed the incident, discussing the initial discovery of the liquid, the approach to the chauffeur, the inspection procedure, and the communication with bystanders. Each step was analyzed carefully, with the goal of improving efficiency and maintaining the highest standards of security. Even as the day progressed and normal routines resumed around the palace, the lessons from the morning remained relevant. Daniel understood that the smallest details, a few drops of liquid, a hesitant movement, a tense glance, could have implications in a high-security environment. Vigilance, patience, and professionalism were always required, and every member of the royal guard had to embody these qualities consistently. As he returned to his patrol, Daniel noticed the sun climbing higher, casting brighter light on the palace grounds. Birds sang in the nearby trees, and the streets were gradually filling with people going about their daily lives. It was a reminder that life continued normally, even when unexpected incidents occurred. The work of the royal guard was to protect that normalcy, ensuring safety while managing tension calmly and effectively. Daniel walked along the perimeter, reflecting on the morning. The discovery of the drops in the glove box had triggered a series of carefully executed steps, each designed to minimize risk and maintain order. The incident, though minor in reality, demonstrated the importance of procedure, communication, and professionalism. For Daniel, the most valuable outcome was the confirmation that the team could handle unexpected events with composure and skill. As he continued his patrol, Daniel felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The situation had been resolved safely, the chauffeur had been treated fairly, and the palace grounds remained secure. It was a small victory, but in the royal guard, small victories were meaningful. They reflected the commitment, discipline, and expertise required to maintain safety in a complex and high-profile environment. And so, the morning ended with a return to calm, the streets near the palace once again quiet and orderly. The black luxury car had disappeared from view, but the events surrounding it would remain a valuable lesson for Daniel and his colleagues. Even minor incidents could test skills, patience, and professionalism, and handling them well reinforced the strength and reliability of the royal guard. The day after the incident, the streets near the royal estate seemed almost ordinary again. The quiet morning, the distant hum of passing cars, and the faint scent of flowers from the palace gardens all suggested that nothing unusual had occurred. But for Daniel and the royal guard, the events of the previous day lingered in memory. Even a minor incident, like a few drops of liquid in a glove box, could have far-reaching consequences if handled poorly. The guard had acted with professionalism, but it was important to reflect, review, and ensure that every lesson was learned. Early in the morning, Daniel gathered with his team at the palace briefing room. The walls were lined with photographs of past royal events and plaques recognizing outstanding service. The room had a quiet, serious atmosphere, a place where planning, reflection, and discussion took place daily. Daniel began the meeting by summarizing the previous day's events, outlining each step from the initial observation of the approaching car to the final verification of the harmless liquid. "Yesterday, we handled a situation that could have escalated if not managed correctly," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. "We identified a suspicious element, confirmed it was harmless, and ensured the safety of everyone involved. This is exactly how protocol should work." His team listened attentively, understanding that even minor incidents could teach valuable lessons. One junior guard asked about how to manage public attention during such situations, noting that some people had taken photos and videos of the scene. Daniel nodded, recognizing the question as important. "Social media and public attention are realities we must consider in every operation," he explained. "Even if an incident seems small, it can be amplified quickly. That is why our professionalism, calm behavior, and clear communication are so important. Our actions define public trust, and trust is just as vital as security itself." The guards discussed several points, including communication with bystanders, methods for rapid verification of suspicious items, and the importance of maintaining calm even when the situation appears tense. They also reviewed the steps taken to ensure that the chauffeur was treated fairly and with respect throughout the process. For Daniel, it was a reminder that security was not only about observation and action, but also about human interaction, discretion, and maintaining dignity. Later that morning, Daniel received a call from the palace administration. The chauffeur had reached out to apologize formally in writing for the confusion caused by the spilled cleaning solution. He expressed gratitude for the professionalism and patience shown by Daniel and the team. While the liquid had been harmless, his willingness to acknowledge the situation reflected respect for the process and those involved. Daniel made a note of the apology, filing it alongside the documentation of the incident. As the day progressed, the story of the incident quietly began to circulate among local news outlets and social media channels. Clips of the guards inspecting the vehicle, combined with commentary about security procedures, captured public attention. Some viewers expressed admiration for the professionalism of the Royal Guard, while others were curious about the drama of what seemed to be a minor issue. Daniel understood that perception could be unpredictable, and he hoped that people would see the story as a demonstration of diligence rather than alarm. Despite the growing attention, Daniel and his team focused on their responsibilities. Patrols continued as usual, checkpoints remained staffed, and security routines were maintained without interruption. The palace grounds, already highly secure, received no additional threats, but the guards knew that their readiness was what ensured such peace. Even a minor incident like this reinforced the need for constant vigilance, training, and teamwork. By mid-afternoon, senior officers called Daniel to a meeting to formally review the incident. They acknowledged the team's actions, noting the importance of maintaining calm, verifying suspicious findings, and managing public perception. This situation demonstrates that even small details must be treated seriously, one officer explained. Your handling of the event shows professionalism, discipline, and care. Well done. Daniel felt a quiet sense of pride, but also humility. Security was not about recognition, it was about responsibility. The incident would likely fade from public memory, but the lessons learned would stay with him and his colleagues. Even minor experiences could strengthen skills, refine procedures, and reinforce the importance of teamwork and clear communication. Meanwhile, the chauffeur, though embarrassed by the attention he had received, appeared to have a new appreciation for the responsibilities of the Royal Guard. He had experienced firsthand how small incidents could require serious attention, and he now understood the care, patience, and professionalism required to manage potential security risks. In private, he reflected on the lessons of calm compliance and respect for protocol, recognizing that these principles were essential in situations that could easily become tense or misunderstood. Social media, while often unpredictable, also provided an unexpected benefit. Many viewers expressed support and respect for the professionalism demonstrated by the Royal Guard. Comments highlighted the careful balance between vigilance and fairness, and some even drew attention to the teamwork and discipline required to manage the situation without causing unnecessary alarm. For Daniel, this was a reminder that diligence and integrity could earn respect, even when events were minor. As evening approached, Daniel returned to his usual patrol route around the palace. The streets were bathed in warm golden light, shadows stretching across the pavement. The quiet hum of the city created a calm atmosphere, though Daniel's attention remained focused. Experience had taught him that vigilance could never be paused, no matter how ordinary a day appeared. He reflected on the sequence of events. The initial observation of the approaching car, the discovery of the drops, the careful inspection, the professional handling of the chauffeur, and the verification of the liquid. Each step had been important, not only for security but for maintaining trust, professionalism, and public confidence. Daniel realized that these small moments, often unnoticed by the public, defined the effectiveness of the Royal Guard and reinforced the standards by which they operated. Later that night, Daniel documented the final report, summarizing all actions taken and noting any recommendations for future improvements. He included reflections on the human aspects of security, the importance of calm communication, respect for individuals, and the role of observation in assessing potential threats. The report would serve as both an official record and a learning tool for training other guards. As he finished writing, Daniel took a moment to appreciate the quiet. The palace was secure, the streets were calm, and the potential risk had been addressed efficiently. The tension that had filled the morning was now replaced with a sense of accomplishment, a quiet understanding that diligence and professionalism had made a difference, even in what seemed like a minor incident. The next morning, life around the palace returned fully to routine. Guards resumed their regular patrols, visitors moved through authorized areas, and the estate hummed with its usual quiet energy. Daniel knew that future incidents, whether minor or serious, would come again. Each event would require vigilance, careful observation, and steady judgment. But he also knew that the lessons learned yesterday would strengthen the team, refining their ability to respond effectively and calmly. The chauffeur, too, returned to his usual duties, now carrying a deeper understanding of the demands of high-security environments. His experience reinforced the importance of following instructions carefully and respecting the procedures put in place for the safety of all. Even a small mistake or accidental spill could trigger a series of professional responses designed to ensure safety and maintain order. For Daniel, the entire incident became a quiet reminder of why the Royal Guard's work mattered. It was not about dramatic moments or public recognition. It was about attention to detail, patience, and unwavering dedication to duty. Every observation, every decision, and every interaction contributed to a safe and secure environment. The day's events, though minor in reality, reinforced the principles that guided the Guard's service every day. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the palace grounds, Daniel completed his patrol and reported into the central command. The day had ended without incident, the estate remained secure, and the lessons of the morning had been documented and shared. The calm of the evening reflected both the diligence of the Guard and the stability of the system they protected. Even as he prepared to leave, Daniel knew that the story of the luxury car and the small drops in the glove box would remain an example in training sessions for years to come. It illustrated the importance of vigilance, procedure, and professionalism. It demonstrated how minor events could test skills, judgment, and patience, and how careful management could turn potential tension into a successful resolution. And so, the palace returned to its usual calm, its grounds protected by the steady, watchful eyes of the Royal Guard. Daniel walked away with a sense of quiet pride and satisfaction, knowing that the morning's incident, though minor, had reinforced the importance of professionalism, vigilance, and care in every aspect of their work. The incident had ended safely, lessons had been learned, and trust in the Royal Guard had been maintained.